What's up, YouTube? Today I'm talking about my 2022 NBA draft winners. We'll be talking a little bit about what picks I really loved, along with what teams I feel like did a really great job in this year's draft. So before we do, feel free to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, tell me who your winners were, if you disagree or agree, and let's just jump right into it. So first off, I want to talk about the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks were able to steal AJ Griffin with the 16th pick in the 2022 NBA draft, and I really thought that this was a really good pick by them. I wasn't super high on AJ coming out of college, but I do really like this pick from the Hawks. I think he dropped a significant amount during the draft, and dropping to 16, and for Atlanta to be able to swoop him up, I think is great. And I think that Griffin, because there are some health concerns, I do worry again about long-term issues with him. But the idea of having this guy who has really good size, really great shooting ability, some improvements can be made on defense, but I think he has all the tools there. Kind of a high upside player, and I think Atlanta just knocks us out of the park with drafting him at 16. And I'm kind of surprised other teams passed up on him, but ultimately I give the Atlanta Hawks an A grade for this because it's just right where you wanted to pick him. And so I applaud the Hawks for selecting AJ Griffin. Loved it. Thought it was great. Up next is the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks did not have a pick entering the night, but they were able to walk away with Jaden Hardy at the number 37 pick. There was a lot of rumors that they were trying to get into the first round. They end up not getting in the first round. They end up getting the pick at 37 and acquire Hardy. I personally really think Hardy is a guy who is going to come into the league and just be a really good scorer. I think the fit alongside other guards, other dynamic guards in Dallas will really benefit Hardy. Watching Luka play, watching Brunson navigate, and I really just think that it's a good pick for a guy with this much talent and a guy who has a high ceiling to land with a good team like Dallas. I think is very ideal for a young prospect. So I applaud the Mavericks here. Love the pick. And I ultimately think Hardy is going to be a really good, at the very least, rotational player in the league. And I think we could see him play and get some minutes for the Mavericks this year. So applaud Dallas there. Really love him. Up next is Detroit. The Detroit Pistons were really winners by everyone's opinion this year after the draft. And I think that their pick of Ivy was just a match made in heaven. I think it was really great for them to be able to get a guy who's going to fit seamlessly with Cade Cunningham, who was the number one pick from last year. And then they were able to get the best center in the draft in Jalen Duren, a guy who's just going to be a great rim runner, a great lob threat for Cunningham and Ivy. And I just think now that you have this team that is built in Detroit, that has a young core, you have Sadiq Bey, you have some cap space where you can maybe use and really build out your roster. So the Pistons, big winners on draft night, in my personal opinion. I think that it will be really interesting, in my opinion, to see what they do with their coach, Dwayne Casey. Casey was a guy who was really, really in question during this season. And I just wonder exactly if he's going to be somebody who the Pistons want to keep long term. Right now, it seems like they're fine with rolling with him. But I am interested to, again, see what happens there. But Ivy, Jalen Duren, like some great, great picks there for a team that's been really bad recently. And I think it just gives a lot more hope to the organization, to the fans, that Detroit is going to be relevant again. And it's going to take some time. A lot of these guys are young. They do have, each of them have flaws in their game. But I think the idea of having two really dynamic guards, a big man, now you just need some front court help. And I feel like they could be really, really do some damage in the future with that young core. Another winner that I have is the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors had the 28th pick in this year's draft, and they were able to also acquire a player that I really liked as well. But let's start off with Patrick Baldwin. So Patrick Baldwin was drafted by the Warriors, and he is just a guy who had an awful season in college playing for the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And he is a guy who came into the year, there was a lot of hype around him. He has talent. He's got size. He's got some scoring ability. And the Warriors just have such a high ceiling with this kind of a player. And I think if you put him in a situation where he doesn't need to be a guy who needs to perform immediately. The Warriors have a lot of young players already. They have some, veterans that want to be a part of the rotation. Like, they can really take their time with Baldwin. So I really love this pick for the Warriors. It's a high upside pick, and if it doesn't work out, it was the 28th pick. So nobody's going to blame them for missing on this when they didn't have to really have a whole lot of draft capital given up in the pick. The second player that they were able to select was Ryan Rollins. They selected him at number 44. That was a pick that they got from Atlanta. And just two amazing pickups for Golden State here. Ryan Rollins is a guard out of Toledo who is able to really be a good pick and roll player. He provides a good guard presence, just really knows how to play the game, high IQ, all that good stuff. And I think it's another player that really at 44 is really good value. And for Golden State to have two picks that have, one of them has a high ceiling and one of them is just great value. Like, I think Rollins is a guy who should have been taken late in the first. He's taken in the middle of the second round. So really like that for Golden State, and they continue to play really well. When they're able to trade a player for cash considerations, it's kind of head scratching to me why a team like Atlanta would want to move off of that pick. And, it's just kind of weird. Golden State had done it before with Jordan Bell. They do it again here with Ryan Rollins, and we'll see if there is a similar impact there where Rollins can get some minutes for the Warriors. Last year, the New Orleans Pelicans were able to walk away with Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, who both ended up being really good players. Herb Jones obviously was one of the better defensive players this last year, especially for a rookie. And so the Pelicans kept that good trend of drafting going into this draft, and I really love what they did. They were able to select Dyson Daniel at number 8, who I believe is a guy who really has a high ceiling. He provides that Lonzo Ball role that they lost when Lonzo left to Chicago. So I think, obviously he'll have to develop a little bit more, but he's a really good player, and I think he's a guy who's going to be able to fit in seamlessly along with these other guys who need to work on their defense, and Daniels is already coming into the league with some solid defense. He's a good passer, just I think a smart player, and I think smart players stick around in the league, and I think that's what New Orleans needs. So good ceiling and very good potential with Daniels. And then I loved the fact that they were able to walk away with EJ Liddell. Liddell is a guy who I had in my top 20, and I think he, on my personal big board, and I think that he is a dude that will provide similar impact to what Trey Murphy / Herb Jones provided last year. A guy who's a good defensive player, has versatility both offensively and defensively, can stay on the floor because of his shooting, and can also stay on the floor because of his defense. Now, he's not the greatest athlete, but I still love the pick. At 41, this is one of the bigger drops in the draft from this last year, from this draft. And so I think that Liddell is going to just thrive in New Orleans. So I really love the pick there for the Pelicans. Up next is the Houston Rockets. Rockets were able to select Jabari Smith at number 3. He's a guy who I thought was the number 2 kind of guy on my big board. I liked Smith a lot. I was surprised that the Magic didn't take him, but he goes to Houston. I think it's a really good fit there for him. He has younger players that he can work with, and I just really like the fact that Smith is going to come into the league and be a part of a team that has a young core already. They may not be as dynamic as what the Pistons might look like or what like the Hornets have looked like with their young core, but I really just like the fact that Smith is going to go to a young team and just have a lot of learning opportunities and a lot of growing opportunities for the Rockets. I also really love the fact that they were able to acquire or select Tari Eason. Tari Eason's a dude that they selected at 17. Again, defender who is a dude who is going to be able to maybe shoot the ball a little bit in the league. I think is a catch and shoot shooter. I think he's really good. And I think that Eason, again, provides defense, provides length, and is a good prospect for the future for them. And just really love that pick. But what really sold me on the pick or on this team's draft for Houston, they were able to acquire, they gave up 2 second-round picks to Minnesota to be able to go and get Ty Washington. So they were not only able to get Ty, I read that wrong. They were also able to get 2 second-round picks. So they were able to move back, get a guy who I'm pretty sure they would have taken at 26, and be able to really walk away winners from this year's draft. Like Ty is great, and he adds just a really good guard for the future for them. I think he works good on ball and off ball, and I think he's just a dude who's going to be able to thrive in the NBA. And I just think that the Rockets walk away with 3 really good players and just ultimately are big time winners for this year's draft. So shout out to the Houston Rockets. They're one of the big winners from this year's NBA draft. Oklahoma City, really love what they did. Chet Holmgren at number 2 seems like a great fit. They've needed kind of this center presence for a while. They have Lou Dort. They have Josh Giddey from last year's draft. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So they really needed a kind of front court presence, and they got that. And we'll also talk a little bit about what they did, but I just really like Holmgren. I think he fits well there. I think with Giddey and Shai there, I think it will be really, really good for Holmgren to have those 2 there, to be guys who can facilitate the ball to him, be a lob threat, be a guy who can get some touches, maybe in transition. But really love the Thunder. And people forget the Thunder were an average defensive team according to defensive rating last year. They were really poor offensively. But this is already a team that's playing defense at a really good level. So we need to not really think of them as like a team that is like completely rebuilding like Houston or Orlando, where they were just bad at everything. Oklahoma City has a good defense in place. I think their coach and Mark Dagnall is a great coach, and I think that they'll move forward here with this young core and look really well. Jalen Williams was also selected out of Santa Clara. I love the pick. Maybe a little too high, but I think he works really good with the Thunder, and I think he's a young guard, plays good on offense, little question marks on defense, but has good length and a really good pickup for them. Liked him a lot. They were also able to acquire from the New York Knicks. They were able to select at 11 Ousmane Dieng, who I think has loads of potential, has again great length, good athletic player, has solid ball handling skills, needs to build his frame out a little bit more, but really high ceiling there. And then they were able to also in the second round be able to select another Jalen Williams from Arkansas. I love him as well. I think he is a center who can maybe provide a little bit of Kevon Looney-esque skills for the Thunder. A guy who can play defense at a good level, just a good hard worker. He takes a lot of charges. And I think Williams is another dude who just was another guy that I liked. I think I had him like around the high 30s, so it matched up with where they took him on my personal big board. But it just really great. Just loved it. And I think both Williams, getting Dieng, getting Holmgren, like you couldn't have asked for a better draft from the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I think that they're going to really emphasize just the need of length in today's NBA, and they got a lot of it in this draft. So big shout out to the Thunder. I think they did really, really great. Another really good pickup for this year's draft was just the selection of Marjon Beauchamp from the Milwaukee Bucks. I think Milwaukee thrives on being one of the better defensive teams in this year's just NBA, and I really like the fit. A lot of people think that he's kind of a Mikal Bridges-esque type of a player who seems to be something that teams value now. So them getting able to get him at 24 without having to make any moves, they just stand put and just selected their guy. I just like the pick a lot. I think he's really good, and I think he'll fit in. He is a little bit of an older prospect at 22 years old going into the season, so do have some questions there, but ultimately for where he was picked, great pick by the Bucks, and I hope that they can develop him into something for the future. A few more winners left here. The Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic had a great draft, again, getting their guy in Paolo Banchero. I think that, when you have that number 1 pick, you got to be able to get your guy. And they kind of fooled everybody by saying it was going to be Jabari. Paolo is the guy, and I think he fits in well with their team. I think that their future is going to be Wendell Carter, Paolo Banchero, and then kind of this guard rotation of Fultz and Cole Anthony. They still have Jonathan Isaac on the team. RJ Hampton's a young prospect that they're still working out that they acquired from Denver. So there's a lot of good things in Orlando, but them getting the number 1 pick and really nailing it, I think was a good thing for them. So shout out to Orlando. They were also able to pick up Caleb Houston in the second round of the 32nd pick. And I really like that pick too. I think he's a guy who I think we'll fall in love with a little bit come Summer League. And I think just as a spot-up shooter, Houston can provide that great floor spacing immediately for the Magic. Another winner here is the Portland Trailblazers. I just really liked how they were able to take Shaedon Sharpe at 7. I think he's a dude who's going to be able to have a really good career in the NBA. And I just think that if he and Simons can, really grow together, I think that's a good young core for when, Damian potentially either leaves the organization in trade or if he retires. I think that still getting a high ceiling young player who may be able to contribute this year is really good for Portland. So a big pickup for them. They also were able to select Jabari Walker and traded for Ismail Kamagate. Walker, I really love, 57th pick. I think I've loved him in last year's draft as well before he left and went back to Colorado. But Jabari Walker is really good. I think it'll be fun to watch him in the Summer League. But Shaedon Sharpe and this Portland Trailblazers team will actually be a nice draw to watch when it comes to the Summer League, because I think their team will be really solid. So big shout out for Shaedon Sharpe and the Portland Trailblazers. And then lastly, this is a team who I don't think really gets talked about too much when it comes to winners. We talked about Detroit, Oklahoma City, talked about Houston. 3 really good winners. I think San Antonio is right up there with them. San Antonio was picking at 9, and they were able to move at this 9th pick and select a guy who I think has a really high ceiling with Jeremy Sohan. Good shoot, or I think he can develop into a good shooter. His shooting isn't there yet. Great defender, good size, young. This is exactly who I think San Antonio would love to have. They don't have as much size on their team as I think they would like to outside of Pirtle and DeJounte Murray. Everybody else in between those guys are more so on the shorter end. Keldon Johnson is only 6'5", I believe, even though he kind of plays that forward position. And so for them to get Sohan, I think is really good. And, he's going to be playing a lot if he's playing defense. Malachi Branham is another dude who I loved. And for them to get him at 20 was really big. I had him as inside my top 10 on my big board. And so Branham, defense is a question. Absolutely. Will he learn to play defense and be more disciplined in San Antonio under Coach Popovich? I think so. So the match there I think works. Good rangy guy. Good 3-level scorer. Really good mid-range scorer. This Spurs team is really shaping up to be a team that I'm really excited to watch in the Summer League. Blake Wesley is also the other guard that I really liked this Spurs team picking. Wasn't super high on Wesley, but because you've nailed 2 really good picks, and at 25, that's a little higher than I would have taken Wesley, you can take a chance on him. Has a high ceiling, was asked to do a lot in for his freshman year at Notre Dame, and he was able to, be really inefficient, but he was able to kind of run a Division I program on the floor. And so Wesley being able to have that skill set, again, wasn't that efficient, but it kind of shows you the trust the coaching staff was able to give him. And I just think that that's a really good pick for the Spurs. So San Antonio is my last winner. I know it seemed like I had 10,000 winners, but that's going to be the end of this video. The Spurs are big winners. What do you think? Are any other teams that you thought were big winners in this year's draft? Let me know in the comment section, and feel free to subscribe to the channel and all that other fun stuff. And I'll see you in the next video.